Greetings to all C3RF members across Canada, indeed around the world, and a special welcome to the folks at Veterans for Freedom on their dedicated streaming channels as they view this video summary of the C3RF update for 18 October 2024. The title of this update is Pants on Fire, and it kicks off by recalling the childhood refrain, "Liar, liar, pants on fire," when calling out a mendacious playmate. Most will be familiar with the school day rhyme, but few realize it has its roots way back in 1810 with a poem by William Blake. Remarkably, the poem resonates in the Canada of today, with the first and fifth verses applying directly to those authorities who are charged with the duty of care to tell us rank-and-file citizens the truth. The first verse reads, "Deceiver, dissembler, your trousers are alight. From what pole or gallows shall they dangle in the night?" That verse forms the basis of the Pants on Fire rhyme, while the fifth verse reads, "What infernal serpent has lent you his forked tongue? From what pit of foul deceit are all these whoppers sprung?" Whoppers indeed, as we recount the tales that have been told us over the last 9 years by our ruling elite. The thing about the telling of whoppers is that they are oftentimes allowed to persist and even become the accepted order of the day, particularly when the cut and thrust of open debate is disallowed. And such, it would seem, is the case in current-day Canada, as certain narratives have been declared to be unassailable, with contrary views punished as heretical. Take the case of former Quebec lawyer Glorianne Blais. She had the audacity to argue on behalf of a client that Wuhan virus vaccines did not deserve the label safe and effective. Indeed, she went so far as to say such slogans were bald-faced lies, and, as Blake would say, derived from a pit of foul deceit. Blais would also pay a stiff price for raising her head above the parapet. In doing so, and as noted in the C3RF In Hot interview, would lose her credentials to practice law in the province of Quebec. Of particular note in Glorianne's case is the fact that the voluminous reams of evidence she brought to the table was dismissed out of hand at each level of the judicial system. Unfortunately, in Canada, this cannot be seen as a surprising development, as the same has happened in courtrooms across the country. This has been noted in these update pages in the form of judges affording governments a so-called margin of appreciation in such matters as they move forward to accept arguments of mootness. Such technicalities, as Brian Peckford would say, obviate any need to examine the evidence at hand and leave lawyers like Blais spinning in the wind with no chance to even begin presenting their expertly researched cases. It is in such an environment that lies are not only allowed to take hold, they are lionized as the one and only truths. As alleged lies like safe and effective are assigned protected status and spread with much fanfare and abandoned, the question becomes, are someone's pants going to catch fire as a result? Given the inability of state-sponsored entities to stop up countervailing narratives, it is becoming more and more likely that such non-conforming storylines may spark an embarrassing pant fire or two. The possibility becomes very real when one considers that recently freed up social media platforms, X prime among them, are actually allowing counter-narratives, otherwise known as disinformation, to show up on their pages. As more and more of these narratives hit the infosphere with supporting evidence that does not crumble under review, chances that someone's pants are going to catch fire become very real. The chances of pants catching fire become very real once evidence by the likes of a Blais or a Peckford is allowed to be taken on the record. In the safe and effective instance, such inconvenient facts may include the actual contract entered into by the Government of Canada and the purveyors of mRNA Wuhan virus vaccines. Such a contract, proffered by Pfizer and signed by Canadian authorities, stated in no uncertain terms that, lacking long-term studies, the adverse impacts associated with the vaccine was an unknown quantity. It goes without saying that, knowing this, the Government of Canada and its subordinate agencies lied when they said over and over again that the vaccines were safe and effective. Most certainly, they can be seen to be criminally negligent in that such a misrepresentation prevented the good people of Canada from forming any kind of informed consent regards the taking of experimental gene therapies. As the lies spread, even more pants are exposed to catching fire. Consider not just the contract that underpins the safe and effective sloganeering, but the process that was used to purportedly confirm such a claim. An authoritative analysis of such work was conducted by the National Citizens Inquiry under the auspices of medical regulatory legal expert Sean Buckley. His authoritative research was featured in the inquiry's interim report of September 2023. This report notes with great concern that the slipshod methodology used to justify the interim order approval of the experimental Wuhan virus gene therapies has been immortalized to become a permanent protocol for the approval of all such COVID vaccines. The report claims in no uncertain terms that, quote, in effect, we fear that there will never be a need for COVID-19 vaccine manufacturers to prove safety or efficacy of their products, unquote. Pants on fire, indeed. If lies are lighting pants on fire now, it won't be long until these garments are on full display for all to see as they are hung from telephone wires. That time is approaching fast, and in the case of Gloria Blais, could be rather spectacular if her class action suit is allowed to take hold in the Canadian court system. Her suit, discussed at length in the C3RF In-Hot interview, names 35 Canadian decision makers who, she claims, lied to the Canadian people regarding the safe and effective label assigned to the Wuhan virus mRNA vaccines. She purposely identified personalities rather than offices in her suit, as she sees served individuals of having trashed their sacred duty of care towards the populations they were sworn to serve. Besides this, she believes it is the wayward and fraudulent decision maker, untethered from their representative responsibilities, that should pay the freight for their indiscretions, not the taxpayer. The safe and effective mantra is not the only lie that has put fire to a pair of pants or two that are about to be hoisted up on telephone wires. There is the diversity is our strength whopper that has become the laughingstock of the nation. What else to think as reckless and massive increases in immigration in the name of diversity are now being linked to intractable economic and security problems that threaten the very social fabric of Canada. On the economic front, flooding the demand side of the housing curve with newcomers has contributed to price points that younger generations just can't afford. This creates a generational problem, as these folks, unlike their parents, will likely never be able to live in a home they can call their own. Then there is the security issue created by policies that roll out the red carpet for cultures that, quite frankly, abhor a Western way of life that is firmly rooted in the Judeo-Christian ethic. Diversity, it seems, is playing havoc with the Canadian security scene as old world rivalries and hatred are imported into the urban centres of Canada. These issues have accelerated on the heels of the barbaric 07 October 2023 attacks in southern Israel by Hamas and their Gazan allies. Unbelievably, Canadian authorities have gone out of the way to adjust immigration policies to bring thousands of Gazans into the country on humanitarian grounds. In effect, these agencies have opened the door for combatants to flow into Canadian towns to inflame a large and engaged Muslim population. The proof is in the pudding and on display in places like Vancouver, where on the anniversary of 07 October attacks, we saw mobs burning Canadian flags as they called for death to Canada and the wiping out of the Israeli nation. It seems diversity is not so much a strength as it is a lie that has already set pants on fire and placed them on telephone wires. In closing, a reminder to join us at CanadianCitizens.org, where you can see this update in its full glory, including links to all of the cited documents. Simply go to the News tab at the top of the page and select C3RF Member Updates from its drop-down menu. Until next time, this is Russ Cooper signing off, wishing you and yours much happiness and freedom from C3RF.